Hi, welcome to the Grandpa Channel. Today we've got a little change of pace. I'm with my granddaughter, Brandi,
Hi.
and she has an interesting story to tell. She's a student in American Sign Language, and I'm going to have her talk a little bit about that and ask her some other questions, but I think you'll find this is very interesting, so I'll turn the time over to Brandi.
Okay. So I first learned about sign language by watching a TV show called Signing Time when I was like 6 years old. And then growing up, I also had a bit of a speech problem, and so I used a little bit of sign language to help me communicate better. And then later in high school, I needed to take 2 years of a foreign language credit. And my school offered Spanish, German, and sign language, and I chose sign language. So I took that my sophomore and junior year, and then I ended up falling in love with it, and so I took it my senior year, and I was in the presidency of our ASL club. I was the sign language teacher's student aide for some of her other classes, and I was like, you know what, I think I might want to do this with my life. So I researched some of the best programs in our state and applied, and now I'm learning ASL to become an ASL interpreter.
Now, didn't you have someone you went to school with that was American ASL?
Yeah, so through taking classes at the high school, we had a few deaf students and hard of hearing students, and so I one of my friends is hard of hearing, and so she's progressively her hearing's getting worse, and she's becoming more deaf. So she thought it was a good idea to take the classes now when she could use the English and ASL. So later down the road, when she loses her hearing, that she already has access to the language.
Great. So how many people in the United States are affected by, have hearing problems and need sign language?
So I can't give any numbers off the top of my head. And there's a difference between like hearing loss and like deaf. So people who are older, like the older the body is, the worse your hearing can become. Deaf people with like who use sign language, they're typically born into the culture or born deaf and they learn the culture, and so those people typically use sign language compared to like the older generation who just happens to be losing their hearing naturally.
So sign language, when you are born deaf and you grow up with it, and knowing that this is the way it is, I'm gonna sink or swim.
Yeah.
So that those people, because they've learned it from the beginning, some of those people are just as normal as could be.
Right. Yeah. ASL is a language. It's just like Spanish or German or English, but it's just not spoken. You use your hands to do that, but it has its own grammatical structure and sentence structure, and yeah, it's just normal is what it is.
Since we've had the COVID, most of the presentations where the governor speaks or the state epidemiologist, or even nationally when President Trump or somebody speaks about the coronavirus, they typically have someone signing. So that must increase the visibility, the demand, the everything.
Yeah. So the person that you see signing is an interpreter. That's what I want to do, is to be an interpreter. And an interpreter's job is a mediator between the hearing world and the deaf world. So the people that you see on TV, they're just hearing the English and translating it into American Sign Language for the deaf people in the audience, but you've seen televised versions, so it's access for all deaf people in that instance. But then the interpreter can also receive and watch sign language and interpret that into English for the hearing people. And it's a great accessibility that's really easy to do.
So how many students are in the same program you are at UVU?
So there's it's the Deaf Studies program, and there are two emphases within that. There's the interpreting emphasis and the deaf education emphasis. So like being a sign language teacher at a hearing mainstream high school, or to going to being like a math teacher in a deaf school. So that's that part. So in the interpreting part, we probably have, honestly, 100 to 200 people in our program.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and we have like other people will just take like the basic sign language, but those who are like that I interact with and that are like really focused on the interpreting and are either on the way to graduation or almost graduating, we have about that many.
So it's probably offered at the university level, probably about everywhere. I mean, a lot of places.
In Utah here, we have a lot of accessibility with that, which is really funny because we don't have a large deaf population here. But Utah Valley University has courses, Dixie State has courses, and I think a lot of the major universities, even if they don't have like that as a program, you can take it as an elective to get some basic vocabulary.
It's very interesting. So when you're making this a career, what would be some examples of what could your career look like?
Yeah, so I'm actually taking a class right now to decide what kind of career field I want to go in. There's medical and mental health, so that's like when you go into the doctors and you have a deaf person, then you can have an interpreter work with that. And then there's video relay service, which is your video calls. So if you ever receive a call and it says, this video is being interpreted by an American Sign Language interpreter, it means that someone deaf called the interpreting agency who is calling the business to schedule appointments or ask questions like help desks and stuff like that.
I've been on a few calls like that.
You have? That's cool.
Yeah.
There's platform speaking, which is what you see on TV, where it's like a big presentation or lecture. There's performance interpreting, which is like the theater and arts and stuff like that. It's where you get a script and beforehand, and you see the interpreters at the performance. I might be missing a few, but there's lots of different career fields that you can go into.
So it would be something that would be trending. It would be something that's expanding and getting bigger instead of contracting and getting smaller.
Yeah.
The opportunities, the way that American Sign Language could be used in the future maybe haven't even been thought of yet.
Right.
Okay. Do you have any other thoughts about, do you feel like you've been led this way, or do you?
I don't think I've been like chosen. Like, I'm just a random hearing person. Like, anyone could take sign language classes and do this, but it does take lots of practice and training. I really enjoy it. I like working with people. I really enjoy creating that accessibility and being that bridge between like the two different cultures and worlds. So I really enjoy it, but it's not just me. There's lots of other people out there too that do it. So.
Well, I can't think of any other questions, but I think that this will be interesting for the people that view the Grandpa channel, to have an actual interview with somebody in the learning American Sign Language that hopes to make a career out of it.
Yeah.
So in closing, I'd just like to say, do your best. Look for somebody to help today. We live in a great world. There's a lot of uncertainty, but it is a great world. And I'm happy to be with you today and hope to see you again on the Grandpa Channel. Bye now.